Hey nerds, we are talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 2, Children of the Comet. We are going to do a spoiler-free review of the episode, and then we are going to do a full spoiler breakdown of the episode starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Nathan.
And I'm Kendra.
So, the spoiler-free breakdown of this episode is, while on a survey mission, the U.S.S. the U.S.S. Enterprise discovers a comet is going to strike an inhabited planet. They try to reroute the comet, only to find that an ancient alien relic buried on the comet's icy surface is somehow stopping them. As the away team try to unlock the relic's secrets, Pike and Number One deal with a group of zealots who want to prevent the U.S.S. Enterprise from interfering. So, Chandra, what did you think of this episode?
I liked it. I guess this is the intention, right? It feels like very classic original series Star Trek without some of the pitfalls of original series Star Trek. And I guess we talked about that a lot. But I like the humor, the campiness of original Trek and how they figure things out. I still like how, the look of this show is so distinctive, or has become so distinctive from Discovery, looking very fresh. Yeah, so it's very nostalgic, but I think the storytelling is much better. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's a good show, and you're seeing characters that we're sort of familiar with, but in a very different light. So pre-original series and seeing them come into their own. So we see a very young cadet Uhura in this and learning more about her and her history. That was interesting throughout this episode. And just, I don't know how much more I can say without spoiling it, but yeah, it was I think just very reminiscent of even TNG, they said they've returned to this episodic storytelling while still, though, keeping Pike's storyline going. So that's still happening in the background, and his doubts or his concern about what he saw in the future. So they're not completely forgetting that happened, which I think used to be the case. A lot of people go through these traumatic and then everything's fine. And so you still see him struggling with that. Yeah. So overall, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good episode. I think the last two episodes have been pretty strong. If I had to rate them, I'd give them an 8 just to give some room for something that blows me away. I'm sure that maybe they'll have something like that later on in the season. I'm trying to dance around the specifics of the episode because it does focus on a particular crew member, but the spoiler-free synopsis doesn't mention it, so I won't mention it right here. But I do appreciate it's one of those episodes where there's a strange new world. I appreciate some of the effort that they're putting into the design of the ship. As you said, it looks a lot different than Discovery because it's far more colorful, even though it's made not necessarily by the same production crew, but some people that probably share that worked on Discovery. They also spent a lot more money on makeup and prosthetics than they did in the past. Well, the aliens on this world and on this inhabited world look very good. But I really appreciated the focus on a character in this episode. Like you said, it's very much reminiscent of old Trek, and that's one of I love Discovery for lots of different reasons, but that's one of my main complaints about Discovery, and that they don't focus on all the characters. So the characters that they do focus on, I appreciate their focus, and they definitely have very rich and interesting storylines, but there are other people who are in the cast who I still don't know much about 4 years into the show. So I appreciate their focus on a specific character during this episode. I will say that, as you said, it is an improvement over old Trek, even in the way that they're doing it episodically, because while there is a focus on one character, you also get highlights from other characters as well. And again, we can get into those specifics when we talk about it in the spoiler portion of the conversation. But back in the TNG era, sometimes when they focused on one character, everyone else seemed to disappear off the ship. And although they're focusing on one character, you get some characterization for some of the other characters who aren't as highlighted. You get a sense of who those other people are as well, because they get some highlights in the episode as well. So I appreciated that. I appreciated that evolution of this form in this modern era. So yeah, and as you said as well, the Pike storyline from episode 1 and also from Discovery continues. So their emotional stakes continue from episode to episode, even if the specific mission changes from episode to episode. But yeah. All right. Anything else before we jump into the spoiler talk? Because like I said, it's very difficult to talk about this without spoilers because it's focusing on the person, and we should talk about the person. All right. So before I move on, I should say, please like and subscribe to get more content like this. We're really trying to push towards getting 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel by the end of the summer. About 50% of people who watch these videos aren't subscribed, so please help us out. We want to provide you with more content like this from diverse points of view. That's the whole mission of our channel, so we really appreciate it. And also comment down below to join the conversation. All right, spoilers ahead. Go watch the episode if you haven't watched the episode. Here we go. All right, so you want to go in chronological order? Or do you want to talk? I mean, this is what did to say before was that it's a horror episode basically, but it's a really good horror episode, and she gets some great characterization here that she really didn't get much of in the original TOS show or in the movie, really.
Yeah, I think we should take it from the top, chronological.
Actually, this is Star Trek apparently has a stinger similar to Marvel now that they show in front of the episode, so that's what that is. Yeah, we start at the beginning of this episode on this planet, which is Persephone 3, and this is what I was talking about earlier about the makeup in this show getting a lot better. These are obviously humans in makeup, but they spent a lot of time making them look alien, which I appreciate. This is more like the makeup job that you would see in like a Star Wars film. Films are like one-offs, and they had to make 22 episodes in a season. So putting this much detail into one character you're not gonna see again, I'm sure was a little difficult back in the day, especially because the budgets of those shows weren't as large as the budgets of these shows, and plus they had to spread them over 22 episodes as opposed to 10.
No, yeah, the costuming, the makeup is great. Like, it's just very textured and also appropriate for the environment, because this is like a desert. It looks like a desert planet.
They're farming for water, similar to like Boba Fett. They're like the sand people, and
but like skin that looks like it. Like they look like this is the type of humanoid who has evolved for this climate, right? Type of thing. Yeah, so it just, I think, makes it a much richer experience. Mm-hmm. It's not just brown face.
Yes, which is what we got in the original TOS era, this is set in. It's not just brown face, or it's not just brown face with things stuck to your forehead, basically. It was better than brown face, but it was still a bunch of mostly white actors, except for Michael Dorn, putting on brown face and then putting something on their forehead, which is why I will always defend the change in Discovery. They definitely look more alien. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I appreciate the effort they're putting in here. So they look up ominously at this comet, and then we land on the Discovery. So this is what I was talking about, where I said it highlights who we're going to focus on, because she's the first shot from the ship. She's in her dress uniform.
And we also open with her log, right?
Yes. It is her. It is Enson's log. Yes, it does. That was the other thing. I haven't seen that on a Star Trek show except for Lower Decks. It's not Enson's log. It's Cadet's log. Cadet's log, yeah, and you get a star date. So yeah, there's lots of hints that they're gonna focus on the horror here. I wonder if they're gonna do that for every person that they focus on, because you would sometimes get that with like Data. Sometimes you get Data's log. He's the one who's doing it, but for most part, it's the captain. I wonder, that would actually be a good hint on what
it would be.
Yeah. So she's in dress uniform, and you get, like I said, Ortega is not the main focus of this episode, but you get a sense of her personality because of this practical joke she plays on her, and also you get a sense of her personality later on in the episode when she rises to the challenge that the captain puts in front of her, and also names a maneuver after herself. They go to the captain's quarters, and they also, I appreciate the writing here, because the expository dump that she gives later on would be weird, except for they set it up here, and they say her father says that she runs off. She doesn't. The specifics of what she said, I forget what she said.
She's unburdened by conversational barriers or something like that, which was a very, I think, fatherly.
Yeah, a very kind and diplomatic way.
You don't know how to shut
up. Exactly. So if she hadn't said that, it would have been weird, and it would have stuck out. Like, why is she giving all this personal information to these people in this setting? But they set it up here, so it makes sense. Yeah. I also appreciate or a little bit of information. So even though the captain isn't even in the scene, you get some characterization of him as well, because he isn't the first captain in Star Trek who has had like dinner scenes, but he specifically is the first captain we've seen have dinner scenes where he has lower deck people at the dinner. It's not just the command crew, as Ortega says. Yeah, the regular people. Yeah, she said. Her father liked to say that I'm burdened by conversational boundaries. It's a very diplomatic dad thing. Yeah, and then he laughs at her dress uniform here. And it seems, I don't know, did you get the sense that they were hazing her? They definitely like her at the end here. But
yeah, I got the sense they were being like a little sterner than normal, and I guess just sort of testing like to see how she would respond, and no maliciousness in it at all. So it was a very sweet one. But can we talk about how large and beautiful the captain's cabin
so
is?
I don't know if this is the captain's cabin or the captain's. So if we go back,
because that's what Ortega calls it, right? Like the captain's.
Is that what she said when they were in the? I don't know. That's what she called it. I don't know if this is where he sleeps or if this is like a place where the captain has. It's the captain's place for entertaining dignitaries, because this is the flagship of the Federation at this point. The Enterprise is always the flagship, so they do a lot of diplomatic missions. So I don't know if this is actually his quarters or if this is like where he would go entertain dignitaries. It's unclear.
Yeah, I don't think it's his quarters, but I think she called it the captain's cabin. But it was a lot more luxurious than I anticipated, because it looks.
It's like a lounge. It's a lounge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think,
like much nicer than anything we've seen before. So a lot of detail and just very comfortable.
Yeah, the production design in here is awesome. Even with a fireplace there, it's pretty cool. We get a bit of background on Hammer here. Even though this is the only time we see him in the episode, we get more of him than just like a flash of him, which is what we got in the last episode. I assume sometime during this season we're going to get a whole Hammer episode that focuses on him. I think in the main cast there are less than 10 people, so that I'm sure they have enough time to do one for everyone in this season at some point. I appreciate that they started with Uhura, even though she's not the highest rank on this show, she's the legacy character that we haven't spent time with yet, because we had spent some time with Spock and Pike, and even Number One to a certain extent on Discovery. So it makes sense logically to start with her. So yeah, I'm not sure if you watched Enterprise, but the Enar are just different kinds of Andorians that are underground. So that's why they're blind, but they have other senses, like the cadet says here. But if you didn't watch Enterprise, it was also a very cool way to introduce them here. A very clever way to explain this without, again, him having to do an expository dump. So I appreciate the writing. It also shows her skill as well, her talking to him, Andorian and Vulcan. Yeah, at the end of this conversation. Yeah. So yeah, I think after this is where we get the information that the reason that she joined Starfleet is because her parents died. We also get a little bit of a beat here. It seems like this is something that he would say over and over again, where you see yourself in 10 years, and then he paused a little bit because he thought about his 10 years. He was just doing it out of habit. I assume he does this with all the cadets, but he paused this time.
And now it has a different significance
for him. Yeah.
Because he knows what's going to happen to him, and so I thought that was a nice touch. I like this moment where he goes 12 languages and she's 37, because they're like 22 native languages at this time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought it was like, I think we often don't think about the number of languages across the continent of Africa, right, and how many there are. So I thought that was, you get her history, but also just how diverse her own culture is. And you should count those additional languages.
Yeah. Apparently right now there's 68.
Yeah. So that's why it's like at that point, I was like, I'm pretty sure there could be more, but at least just acknowledging that there's more than one.
Yeah, that was a good addition there. So she definitely knows a lot of alien languages, but Jess, growing up in that culture, she took it upon herself to try to understand the people around her, which is, again, a good bit of characterization there as well. And then she mentions that she was going to go to university in Nairobi, but there was a shuttle crash. This is another, I feel like, I know that the people in space are in danger all the time because they're encountering strange new worlds, but apparently there's a bunch of shuttle accidents in the future, because if you remember Ariam, that's how she got messed up as well. Yeah. And her husband died, or was it her husband or whoever she was married to also died in that crash?
Yeah.
Or her husband or fiance?
Yeah, like the future is not as safe as we think, apparently. With all the technology and these shuttles that can essentially fly themselves, you still have, of course, we don't know what the cause of the accident was because user error is also a thing. But yeah, it's just strange. I guess when you've cured a lot of things and people live long and healthy lives,
Are
accidents.
the only way to really,
Oh,
yeah, the main way people would die. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Her father, mother, and her older brother, I think she said, passed, which again explains some things from previous Trek because we didn't really hear anything about her family at all in the previous Trek, mostly because she was underwritten. Like they had her on the show for representation, which was a breakthrough for the '60s. But yeah, they mostly wrote for the three white guys on the bridge, the two white guys on the bridge, and then the doctor.
to the minimum that they do. And this conversation felt uncomfortable. And it was like that conversation he has in the corridor with Ortegas where you realize, okay, she might be an oversharer. And I'm like, this is not how I would share my like such a sad story. I would gloss over the losing parents and brother part maybe. Or
I don't know.
but
I don't know.
it's
I don't know if I would necessarily gloss over that. I would share. Maybe it's the. I don't know. If you're standing in a room full of people who are in Starfleet, and as Pike says here, you beat out how many applicants? Thousands of applicants, and Spock is no several thousand. So to say that you're not even sure if you're Starfleet, it does require some sort of explanation. I guess she could have lied here, but I don't think that is necessarily in her nature.
yeah,
Yeah.
not to lie, but just it is I feel like it's a conversation stopper. Like when somebody says that, there's not a whole lot to say after. It felt like a lot to learn about somebody all at once. And I think Captain Pike handled it well.
Yeah, he did handle it. He says he's sorry, and then he says after
And I'm like, it's time to retire that 10-year question because
because this is probably the most sherry he got when he asked because I was actually when he asked this question. I was actually thinking, okay, what is she going to say? She was going to say, "I want to be a captain." This came out of left field. So yeah,
it will never happen again. But no, yeah, it's great to learn more about her, even though it is a really sad story. But I do think even in this the conversations that she had. Because later on, you see her doubting herself. You get those flashes of the very confident Uhura that we're used to.
yeah.
Like
She knows her stuff.
She knows it's I think the officer part of it that she has to grow in.
Yeah. So yeah, he says that it's an impressive and heartbreaking story. And I think he also says that he appreciates her honesty because I wasn't looking. I didn't even notice this. I was mostly focusing on him. But like, you see how uncomfortable the other people are looking down and looking away.
And I think especially the part where because when she said she's not sure she's Starfleet, I think Ortegas in particular, and you saw like Spock's reaction was like, wait, what? You got all the way here and you don't know if this is where you want to be?
Right. Which is why
that's a part of it too.
Yeah, he says in the hallway here that the captain values honesty, as do I, but Starfleet is a lifelong dream for many, including myself. If you don't think it's your path, then you should consider basically stepping aside.
Because for Spock, like joining Starfleet caused the rift between him
and Surik, right? Yeah, because he wanted him to go. He wanted him to go to the Vulcan Science Academy. Yeah.
So he sacrificed a lot to be in Starfleet. Yeah. So to see somebody, and I don't think she's flippant about it. I think it wasn't her plan. She had to come up with a new plan and just not really knowing what she wants and all of that. So yeah, and I think
there's a lot of things in there from Discovery that's unsaid. Yeah, it definitely created a rift between him and his father because he chose him over Burnham because they made him choose one child, and he chose Spock, and Spock didn't want it in the first place. So he basically created a rift between himself and his Surik. Basically created a rift between Burnham and him, and also Spock and him at the same time. It was interesting that I forgot about that. So yeah. Then we have a conversation here between Number One and Pike. Basically, she's pushing him to not just give in or accept his fate, is what I wanted to say here. Yeah, he's apparently learned all the names of the people that he's going to save. So he's decided that it's his sacrifice is worth it. I also like how this ties into the episode as well, because at the end of the episode, this speaks a little bit about destiny at the very end, based upon what they learn. I'm not sure what he's going to do with the information that he gets at the very end, but he definitely looks up all these kids now, because that he has them in his head, but the last time he saw them is when he got prior knowledge. So he saw them as adults, but he looked them up and they're like 12-year-olds now. So that's interesting to me. I'm not sure what he's gonna do with that information.
But also, I had to pause. I was like, wait, you can just pull up information on any Federation citizen?
I think he's a highly ranked Starfleet officer on the flagship of the Federation, so that's probably why. I don't think you can necessarily pull that up. I don't know. That's especially if we're talking about people's children as well. That I think being able to pull up information on anyone is fine. Being able to pull up information on anyone's children, I don't know if that's necessarily fine. So yeah. Anyway, this is moving on from here. We actually get into the guts of the episode, which is this is the mission. Spock gives a brief that the comet is going to hit Persephone 3 and it's going to kill the whole population and destroy the planet. You get also a little bit of characterization here with Pike saying that he loves this job. Again, I like the way that Anson plays his character. He definitely shows a range of emotion, because when he's thinking about his future, you get more than this gung-ho, everything is awesome persona that he shows the rest of the crew. But I appreciate this persona that he puts on for the crew as well. It puts everyone at ease, because you can tell he runs his ship very differently than Picard does, because the people around him were just as stiff as he was, because that's the way he ran his ship. Everyone here is very laid back. You go all the way back to Ortegas, and it took until the season finale of Picard for him to like even go to a game with them, and you see how very casually Ortega is dressed here, and that's just the tone that he sets on the ship, which is again very good characterization without actually having to say it. You can just you can see it, which is awesome. And you know what? When I watched this the first time, I didn't notice that Hammer was on the bridge during this.
Oh yeah, because he made that comment when security officer Lahan says, because now their goal is to cause the comet to adjust its trajectory, and they're going to use torpedoes to do that. I think that's Lahan's suggestion, and he makes a crack about, well, and how long it will take, and you say that, but I'm the one who's actually going to have to do it. Like, it's not as easy as you think it is. So yeah, so I think like the way the crew interacts, they're very comfortable with each other, or at least not afraid to let their personalities
go. This is a rosy assessment considering I'm the one who has to do it.
And yeah, so they execute the plan, and surprise, like big surprise actually, is the comet has shield, which like, oh, okay, nobody was expecting that. And then they decide to, so in the preview, I think at the dinner, Pike noted that Uhura was up for the next away mission. Right. They also set that up. So she's a part of the away team along with Spock. They meet with Kirk's brother, who is
a xenobiologist. He's in the briefing to try to figure out how to resolve this issue. Samuel Kirk is in this briefing. So yeah. They, in short, they figure out that there's a structure that they can go and investigate. I mean, apparently the force fields do not go up unless there is an attack, so they can beam in.
Yeah, which is also a huge risk. Like whatever. Yeah. Like you've already seen like a sign of intelligence that you didn't anticipate, but sure, let's beam into this subterranean structure on a comet. No, I love it. I'm just like, oh, this is not gonna go well. But they get there and they're inside this structure. And what I like is you see Uhura's like excitement just as they beam aboard, like that tension that she's feeling, because this is her first.
Well, she sees some apprehension. So like I don't know if she this is the first time she's ever been transported. Like she's mostly been traveling around on shuttle. And I don't know, Enterprise made it seem like the transporter was like a very risky new technology. And they would, in the first part of the series, they would only transport like cargo. They wouldn't transport like human beings. And this isn't that far away from that era. So I can imagine that transporters are maybe used for Starfleet for missions like this, but like regular people get around on shuttles.
I think too, it's like where they were transporting to, because like the surface of a comet that is like traveling extremely fast, like I think any rational person would be slightly concerned about the mechanics of this, but they make it, right?
But transported Chief Kyle, which saw in the previous episode, apparently is very skilled. One thing I forgot. So like we have a little bit of scene here where Nurse Chapel is flirting with Spock, and I guess this is a nod to the original series where Nurse Chapel was like in love with Spock, but this Nurse Chapel is far more interesting than the one that they wrote in the TOS era. I didn't understand. Did you understand what she was giving them to they have EV suits? Why do they need an additional? Oh wait, the surface of the comet is bombarded.
Probably just that their suits are not gonna combat all of the radiation, and so here's an extra thing, or at least if your suit fails in some way, you have an extra layer of protection.
Yeah, and also, at a certain point, which is good because at a certain point, Samuel does something stupid and they have to take his helmet off, don't they?
Yeah. So like a cool science aside, I met a neighbor, somebody who lives like a block away from me and has probably lived in the neighborhood longer than I have, but who works on developing drugs to counteract like radiation poisoning from a nuclear bomb. Is the sort of idea, but it would be something that you would preferably, or you could take orally to quickly add to the effects of said radiation poisoning. Oh, that's pretty, that is actually.
So it's an actual thing that someone's working on.
That people are concerned about and working towards, especially given the times that we live in where I guess that threat of nuclear war is a little bit high right now. So
they go in the chamber and there's this giant egg in the middle of it, which, like I said, Samuel decides to touch for some reason.
And everybody's like, step back. No, he's, oh, yay. That was funny to me. I was just like, why?
I think what they're going to do is he's science division. He's not a red shirt. He's a blue shirt. But if they do this as like a running gag where whenever he's on a away mission, he gets injured because we know that he's going to die eventually in TOS, it would be a funny running gag. He was like, he was accident prone the entire time. He was eventually going to die from what?
Because honestly, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, okay, like we're really gonna be like TOS and just kill people off.
Yeah, he's not gonna. He's not. None of these people, because we know they're gonna be there later on. Except for Ortegas, we don't know when she dies. All these people will show up in TOS, including him. But he ends up as a dead person in TOS.
Yeah.
His brother finds his dead body, and they just had William Shatner play his brother and just put a mustache on him, so that you just saw his dead body on the ground. Yeah.
But so I thought this was cool, like the whole how this chamber communicates and figuring it out. And it's like very different. You see Uhura with a pad and stylus, like actually trying to figure things out after this.
Yeah. Yeah. She seems hesitant here, but before Samuel does something stupid, he does encourage her. She's like, you're the one who can figure this out. These markings look like a pattern. And then she starts to work. But I guess without the chapel thing, they do say that there's oxygen in this chamber, but they're on a comet, so it has no atmosphere. So without the thing that Nurse Chapel gave him, he would be dead because they had to take off his helmet. So they were thinking here. So what is it? Oh yeah, and apparently there's some interference. So they tried to transport back, and it wouldn't allow them to transport. It wouldn't allow them to transport back. So he had to use a defibrillator to stabilize him, and then then the Ahura had to figure out how to get them out of there. So the musical chamber stuff was very cool. I forget the movie where the aliens came and they were just like music. Was it Close Encounters of the Third Kind or something like that? When the ship comes down and it starts playing music, and that's how they're communicating with the people. So it was very much like that, and I appreciate it. This is not even really techno babble. The actual scientific talk here about how music has lots of mathematical properties. So it could be something that could be shared by alien civilizations.
Yeah, and then the shepherds show up. So there's that added surprise. There's this attack on Enterprise while the away team is trying to figure things out. And this new species that's there to protect the comet. But he quickly corrects Pike. Mahani is the name of this. He calls it an arbiter, and apparently that's what these arbiters can do. They can bring life to planets, or if they choose to destroy planets. When they come across as very, in the logline they call them zealots, but very firm in their beliefs, and they're more technologically advanced than the Federation, right? Their ship is more advanced, more firepower,
faster. They can't outrun them. They can't.
And they're pretty clear, like and they know that the away team is down there. Like, you've already desecrated the temple, and they're going to die there. There's no. And so basically, they just have to stall for time to figure out.
I will say this. So I appreciate a lot of the production work on this show. Like this bridge looks beautiful, even though it's not anywhere near the canon of the size of how big this viewport should look from TOS. But this guy looks like a video game character. The CGI that they did on him does not look convincing at all. It's obviously a CG character, and he doesn't look like a really good one. He looks like a video game character. But that's a minor quibble with this episode. That's mostly, like I said, good. And the graphics work that they do on the Comet is a lot better than this when they're not trying to render a person or render a being. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, I think Pike calls them zealots too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also a nod in here to the Prime Directive. He doesn't really mention the Prime Directive, but he says that we don't interfere with people's development, but we're not going to let them just be killed either. And then the impact will kill them. But they don't want to really hear any of it. And as you said, they're not really in a position to fight them on it.
Yeah. Which they realize, right? To their credit, they're like, our best defense is essentially to run, right? And regroup or whatever, but we will not win a fight with them. So we have to outsmart them.
Right.
Which is what they wind up doing. So they pick up the signal from Mahanit, and it's the song, I guess it's the song that Uhura was humming earlier.
Yeah, the Kenyan song. So do you think, so she's from Kenya. Do you think that Dr. Mbinga is also from Kenya? Because in the previous episode, Pike mentions to him that he visited where he told him to. Now, are they saying that he visited nearby where he used to live, or he just a place that he suggested? The actor is Nigerian, but sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know. We should maybe find that out.
Yeah.
But from the name, I can't.
Yeah, I can tell the actor was Nigerian from his actual real name, but I don't know if Mbig really is a Kenyan name. It's not one that I am familiar with. So it might have been a made-up name that a white writer wrote, similar to T'Challa. so.
I guess we'll figure that out. But yeah, so we'll be. Oh gosh, drawing a blank. The Discovery actress or the character.
She's Nigerian.
Yeah. Okay, and the character
and the actor is Nigerian. Yeah. Because if you remember at the end of season 3, she mentions I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. The Okboguni caves where she did diving, and those are in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So she's Nigerian. So yeah, this is when Uhura starts to figure out that there is a musical pattern here, and we get the explanation, as I mentioned before, that there is mathematics in music. And like you said, the computer identifies the song as a song from Kenya. So the crew, even though they feel a little impotent in this moment because the shepherds won't let them do anything, they get a bit of a relief that the away team is actually trying to figure it out, that they're sending signals. Yeah, I will say that the actual reveal here of her figuring out what she needed to do or what she needed to sing to release the shields wasn't clearly explained. She just sung something and then the shields went down.
I appreciated that, because sometimes when they get into the babbling of why they're doing something, I feel like the more you explain, the more you can get into trouble if people are like, that's not actually a thing, or
that makes no sense, or that makes no sense. Yeah,
that makes no sense. And so I appreciate that she was just felt like she was being intuitive about it. She was figuring things out, and it sounded like she was just singing some basic scale. Yeah. And so I was fine with that. I was like, I don't need you to explain how you're figuring this out, but and I think part of it was also the emotion with which she was singing, and I think that was a part of it as well. So it worked for me, at least.
One thing I forgot to mention, this episode is really constructed well, and this show was casted well. So this actress, Celia Rose Gooding, is a Tony Award-winning actress for a musical theater album. What is it called? Jagged Little Pill. So they cast her knowing that she could sing, not just sing, but had an award-winning voice. So I assume that they're going to create lots of opportunities for her to sing. They created a whole plot around her having to sing her way out of this problem.
Will we get an episode that's a musical?
I don't know if we're going to get an episode that's a musical, but this also jives with the Uhura that Nichelle Nichols played, because we got scenes with her singing as well. So they cast this role very well. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to her singing more in the future. Anyway, so she figures out the shields thing, and they get transported back, and Nurse Chapel helps Sam, but they still have the issue of the comet, and they can't do anything about it because of the shepherds. And the shepherds start to attack them. So they start to attack them because the shields went down. So they feel like they desecrated the temple of how did you pronounce it? Mahit?
Mahani.
Yeah. This is the characterization that I mentioned earlier with Ortega. So the captain speaks to her about being the best pilot in Starfleet. It's so funny. He questions her when she says it, and then she doesn't even answer. She just right to work. Evasive pattern on Ortega's Gamma 1. It's I don't know if they have holodecks on this ship. They might, because they in TAS, the animated show, they did show that there's a holodeck that they never had the budget to actually show on the regular show. So maybe, I don't know, if she's simulations or something like that on the holodeck, we shall see.
Be flying to get away and make it in front of the comet, because they rightly figure they're not going to keep firing on them if Mahani can be destroyed. So I enjoyed the chase, and again, it's like the visual difference between this and Discovery, right? Because now we've gotten used to those detached nacelles and just a really flashy and super fast, and this not as fast. Like it was just like you definitely feel the time difference, but still very cool nonetheless. And even their EV suits, like we got to walk it back in time, but they're chunkier. Everything I guess is.
Although I think they put themselves, like their EV suits are better than, say, the EV suits that you saw in Enterprise. But they were still advanced, because if you remember the first episode of Discovery, her suit was very advanced. Burnham's suit, when she was doing a walk. So they couldn't. There's only so far you could go. I actually, in the future, they should probably just have personal. The future that Burnham is in. Maybe they should have just had personal, like, force fields or something like that to say that they didn't need EV suits, because they do look slicker. But I feel like they're not as slick as you would think they would be with like 1,000 more years of advancement. Yeah, I think they have less hard pieces, right? It's mostly like it's more sleek. They definitely have less hard pieces than the suits that they wore here. But yeah, this is also what I was talking about when I said that even though the alien looked a little wonky, this space flight looks beautiful. It's very well rendered. So yeah, they drop out in front of the comet, and then they play possum here, which is funny. And Pike is even, please help, we really need your help, or we're gonna explode. So yeah, it's what exactly I understood what he was doing here. He's obviously heating the ice to change the trajectory, but what is he using? Just the shields? He's making the shields radiate heat?
Yeah, I think that's what he did, was just like heat it up to carve off a chunk of Mahani so that it would force it or change
the trajectory.
I don't know if the idea was that if the chunk falls off, it will like just shift, make it automatically shift the trajectory or whatever. But that was the goal, essentially, is to not have it hit.
Yeah, so it works. Right? And it also apparently dumps a bunch of water vapor on the planet, which is going to change the evolution of the people on the planet, which allows the shepherd basically to say, I told you so. And at this point, you think this guy is self-deluded, but then you get the information later on that maybe he wasn't self-deluded. Like, the comet foretold or knew or had some prior knowledge that the exact piece of ice was going to be sheared off. So there's some ambiguity here, and it's not answered. And I also appreciate this, because that you got some of the more interesting episodes of Star Trek. It's Strange New Worlds, right? It's some of these things are going to have to be studied over the course of like hundreds of years. You're not going to get the answer in an episode.
Yeah, and I like how they didn't end with with the captain's log, but he asked those questions, right? Who made Mahani? Because obviously, like, that's a very advanced race. They know a lot about the galaxy, right? If you can send these things out with these trajectories to do these things, your knowledge bank is awesome. And then also, what's your purpose, right? Why are you doing these things? And also, sure, this worked out, but it's also a little bit, you have this being affecting the development of another planet.
Of entire planets, yeah.
Right.
And according to the shepherds, apparently there were a lot more of them and now they're dwindling or they're dying off. So it's interesting. It's a mystery that Trek has a lot, and sometimes they, like, other writers pick up the baton, like sometimes 5, 10, 20 years in the future and fill in those holes. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be explained. It was a good episode without an explanation. But yeah. And also without them dwelling on it. The flagship is not necessarily the ship that you would use to follow this. You would deploy like a science vessel to follow it and catalog it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also like that they parted as you said, not enemies with the shepherds,
yeah.
right? Like
they can open up,
because you certainly don't need
more enemies.
The enemies a lot more powerful than you,
especially
because they didn't even realize they were there. Like they fired on them, and that was like the first inkling that there was even another starship near them. So
maybe they had cloaking technology, or maybe out of reverence they hung back and they just monitor it from afar, and they saw that the Enterprise was, I gotta get used to saying Enterprise instead of Discovery. Enterprise was messing with it, so that's why they showed up. Yeah, they were just monitoring it from afar. So yeah. We also get a conclusion to the beginning of the arc here, where Spock basically says, no pep talk would have increased our odds. You are Starfleet, basically, is what he says here. And you'd be a great addition. We'd be fortunate, is what he says. Starfleet would be fortunate to have you. So yeah, and as I mentioned, we get more parting from number one for him to not accept his fate. And then he creeps on these kids, which I didn't think anything about, but then you mentioned earlier, why can you just look up other people's kids? I'm not sure.
I actually watched it twice today, and it was the second go around, because I like the first time I was like doing other stuff, but the second go around I was like, wait, you can just pull up anybody's information like that? I feel like that is not okay, but also yeah. And we know he doesn't have like bad intentions, but it was just like, oh, like that's way too. And then I think about all the other times like people have searched the Federation databases and just like the wealth of information that comes up. You think about like the life, how we live now, and how
technically you can look up people now if they're adults. Most of those searches where they're searching for example, Discovery, when they went to the future and they were looking for descendants, most of the searches is for adults. But yeah, I think it's the extra thing of getting information about children while they're children without the consent of their parents. I don't really care how highly ranked you are in the U.S. government. I don't think you should have access to information about my kids. So I am not going to just assume good intentions. So that was a little weird. But I don't know. We shall see what he does with that information in the future.
He just needs to not obsess about it. What are you going to do? Change their lives so that they don't wind up where they wind up, and then you don't have to save them?
Yeah, that would be weird, and also a heel turn evil thing to do. So like they want to be part of Starfleet. We already in this episode found out how difficult it is to be in Starfleet. So why change their trajectory so they're not in Starfleet? You can save your life in theirs. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I don't know if they could have him obsess about this over the course of the entire series. I imagine he's going to obsess over it over the course of the entire season. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe he'll come to peace with it, and he'll also get people around him to come to peace with it, because I think he already accepted it, but like Una prodding him because she hasn't accepted it made him dig a little bit more. Yeah. Anyway, we've exhausted this topic extensively. We talked almost as long as the episode, but we are interested to hear what you guys think. So please comment down below to join the conversation, and we will see you next week. All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.